Greetings and welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a sometimes funny, trying to be smart podcast covering all things new and classic Trek. There's a bogey at 10 o'clock. I'm your captain, Myrriah Gossett. With me on the view screen, we have...
I'm Clyde Haynes. Hey, let's go for a spacewalk.
And it's me. Like, I'm the only one who can do it. It has to be me. Humans can't do it. It must be me. There's no... It's just got to be me. Paul to touch it.
Yes.
Indeed. We are tonight discussing and reviewing the 10th and final episode of the second season of Strange New Worlds, entitled Hegemony. I was like, there is a weird way to pronounce this, and now I can't remember it. Directed by Maja Varivio. And written by Henry Alonso Myers. Just a few reminders here at the top. Paul, how can people hang out with us if they enjoy our content?
Well, if you want to subscribe to our podcast, do so at Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. All links at StarTrekPod.co. And if you guys like to help us out and you love our content, considering joining our Patreon for just $2 an episode at patreon.com/StarTrekPod.
Indeed, help us buy Paul a new mic cable so that he doesn't sound like the Gorn.
Yes, that's right. I'll label this current one Gorn Translator.
Gorn Translator cord. Indeed. Clyde, how can people engage with us this evening if they're watching us live?
Hey, if you're watching us live on YouTube, just type in the chat. Want to hear your comments, your thoughts. You type capital P, capital O, capital D, capital Pod in the chat. And then in a moment, when we want to hear your overall thoughts about the show, what you liked, type capital H, capital F, capital HF in the chat. And we will check out your quick thoughts.
And for Nicole, my glasses are beyond my reach right now, but I can still see you guys. But thank you for noticing. It's an aesthetic choice.
You're the only one without glasses tonight, Paul.
Yeah, well, it has to be me. I'm the only one who can do it.
The only one who can do it. That's probably true. I could not read my show notes without my glasses. So that is true. Okay, I think it's time we break some glass because we have Gorn. So it is time for some hot freight. Hot freight. Oh, hot freaks. Paul, what did you think about this episode?
I thought it was fun. It was good. It was fine. I really hate to be continues when,
there's a writer's strike.
There's a writer's strike. That's right. So everyone support your writers, because if you want to see the conclusion of this, it's going to be, so that like, there's a point where you go like, oh, they're not going to resolve this in time, and go, oh no. And then you have that sense of dread. You're marching to be continued. And so, like what I watched it, at 1 o'clock today, and I was like, "Oh, okay, it's good." And then I watched it with my wife at 5, and she was just like underlining all the things that I was thinking, but I was saying, "Oh, I forgive this," but it was just really funny. So we'll definitely dive into that. But like, I would say like it's enjoyable, but I don't know if it holds up to scrutiny.
Interesting. Clyde, thoughts?
This is going to be interesting. I originally wanted to come on and say my hot freak was I didn't like it because the last couple episodes weren't great and everybody hated me for not liking the episode. But the truth is, I really enjoyed this. And one of my absolute favorites, and we'll get there, is like, first of all, let me say this. I don't like to be continued episodes. I really don't. Like, it's so frustrating, especially when we're talking about appointment television, which is kind of what this is. Like, if I have to wait a week, I'm not happy, but now I'm indefinitely waiting. This is the type of stuff that happens. Like, they cut to the to be continued and the show gets canceled and you're just never resolved. That's the type of fear that I have with these things. That being said, right before they hit the to be continued, they did something that I was really impressed by, right? And that is all the people who ended up on the Gorn ship are people who don't have this superpower of invincibility, immortality.
That we know they're ending.
Right. It's 50-50. We'll get there.
Right. Yeah. But like, because the whole thing is
Sam's going to be okay.
We knew Sam, but we knew Chapel was going to be okay. Right. We didn't know how, but the whole like, oh, what's going to happen? She makes it past this episode. right? But when they kind of split up the team, I was like, Mbenga, Lon, I got no idea. These are all new characters.
Mbenga's in the original series. So
okay, well,
yeah.
One superhero character.
Clyde,
Basically, I'm only caring about Lon. So
yeah, it might be time to change your paradigm. You know, if you could only let go of the wheel, you go flying blind, how would it feel? I've been listening to it all week, by the way, the musical all week.
I know,
all week.
There's some bangers in there.
All week.
Some bangers in the musical. Okay.
I'm ready.
Ready for the sing along, which I would love to go to a watch party that was a sing along for the musical. Just putting that out there. Anyway, my hot freak is I really enjoyed this episode. There are some nits that I'll definitely pick, and I have a feeling they're the things that you've probably also noticed as well, Paul. But I, as we know, am a big horror fan. You gave me Gorn puppets. You gave me scenes straight out of Jurassic Park, straight out of Alien, straight out of Independence Day, like all things that I really enjoy. I saw all of those visual references. We got mention of zombie movies, which is like one of my favorite genres of horror movies. And there's things I like the Spock Chapel thing. I thought we had finally sort of put Ish to rest, and I was good with that. But I think it makes sense for the plot of this episode. I really enjoyed Uhura and Pelia together. I enjoyed the split of the team up. I still think we need more Tegas, and we can talk about that later. But overall, I really enjoyed this. I agree. It's frustrating to get this big of a cliffhanger with probably not going to see the conclusion till like 2025 would be my guess.
Jeez.
Just based on production schedules, unless they do like a half release and then a break and then an additional half release, that could be.
That'd be a 5 and 5.
A 5 and 5. Could be potential. But yeah, it's something I definitely want to discuss. So let's jump on in. The first thing I noticed was we are using a generic backlot for Middle America 20th Century, aka the cheapest backlot that we could get, because the rest of this episode is super expensive.
I'm going to say this. I feel like that is an appropriate choice.
I do too. I think it was the correct choice. If I was the line producer on this show, I would be like, this is what we're going to do. And I'd be like, 100% we are.
I looked up and was like, is this Eureka? Like, is this the set from Eureka?
Definitely. But I was going like, we haven't done TOS does that all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So I think if you just sprinkle that in to Strange New World, I think it's totally invisible. In fact, it's probably better that way. That way, when TOS comes in, it's not out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So even if you had more money, I think this was still the right artistic choice.
Oh yeah, I mean they did some really fun things. I saw every penny that was spent in this episode, and I think they did it well. We also have Battelle and Pike having their little video call, and what I found really compelling throughout a lot of this episode specifically was the use of music to shift mood, and I thought it did that really well throughout the entire episode, because you kind of have this nostalgia up at the top, and then we get that really big, Independence Day moment that really brings that doom and gloom, and I thought they did a really great job there. We also have Chapel giving out vaccines as the shuttle and the Gorn ship enter orbit, although she kind of gets out of there, but we're seeing Chapel at least at the start of this episode, being happy with her decisions. And what did you think of sort of our emotional setup between kind of re-engaging Battelle's relationship with Pike and Chapel's sort of forward momentum here, leaving Spock in the past?
What did I think of Battelle?
Wow.
No,
not now, Clyde. No.
I'm I was chatting with people on our kind of our Slack channel for our Patreon members, and we were discussing Battelle a bit. And one of the things that I said is I kind of see where this is going. Like I know I'm supposed to have all the feels,
mm-hmm.
but the truth is it really felt more like, oh, you're trying to set me up like you did with Ariam. Like you want me to care, but I don't.
I mean, we've had way more character development of Battelle than we have of Ariam. I will say.
But it hasn't been. I don't know what it is, but there's nothing about the Battelle character that has been compelling that I'm like, yo, like, don't do this.
Well, we also
right?
never had a scene with her that isn't explicitly tied to Pike, minus our courtroom scene, right?
Or that private conversation.
Yeah, but and here's the thing with the
But that is with Pike. That's just proves my point. We only see her in conversation with Pike. Like, we don't know her as a captain.
Oh yes, 100%.
You know,
here's the problem with Battelle, to your point, Myrriah, is that the one time we see her not like attached in a relationship to Pike, she's the villain.
Right. Like, she's
right.
Yeah.
She's
the adversary.
She's the adversary, but villain.
She's the adversary. I mean, to me, at least for a part of that, she was doing the thing that we didn't want her to do. She was, she was the bad guy. And so, like, I don't, it's not like I have a bunch of warm and fuzzy feelings about her. She hasn't done anything. Like, to me, again, thinking about Airiam in this episode, she seems endearing to Chapel. And I'm like, you're trying to set me up. Like, Airiam was basically almost a non-character for most of that season, and then all of a sudden you're trying to get me to care, like to really care about her. That was kind of what I felt was happening with Battelle. I think she's fine. Like it's not like I'm like, oh, I hate her. I'm like, it's just like character-wise, it's just okay.
And I feel, Kuhn brings up, I love Winona Earp, so I'm predisposed to like the actress who plays Battelle and her character. And I think I was like, I also really liked her on that series. And I was like, so I know she can do more. So it's like, I just wish she was given more.
I guess my question is, like, who would you think would go with Pike? As far as like, well, what kind of significant other would you give Pike that you would go like, oh, this is what I'd want?
I think it's hard because I so closely relate him to TOS, and it's like all of the love interests of TOS are just hot blondes. You know what I mean? Like for Kirk. And then like, I know Pike gets a little bit more complicated, in the small amount of information we're given in the original pilot, but it's like, I mean, I guess it is someone, actually, no, that's a lie. I was about to say someone like Battelle, but I imagine someone who's like wants to go camping and is not like into the room service thing, but I also understand the whole like opposites attract. And sometimes that is what occurs there.
Because she's like she's a nerd basically, right? She's
right. I mean, she's a captain. Like
and then she wants to go to like a bunch of museums, and so like, and if that's his type, that's great.
Yeah.
Like I'm glad he's not like dating someone in a lower rank. Like a non-abuse of power is great.
Look, I like strong, like commanding, keep you on your toes, kind of just a compliment, right? Like, when we think about TNG, there's a whole lot of discussion on did we like Vosh, right, for Picard, but Vosh kept Picard on his toes. It's what we like, or what I liked about Beverly, is that there was a sense of gravitas, this equal, this, but I'm going to make you better, but I'm not, there's something about Battelle that is like, you've told me that they're a captain. And so I want to respect the rank. But the gravitas is missing, right? Like, I don't know that she actually keeps Pike on his toes.
Like, I feel like, for me,
I mean, to P.W. Gregory's point, he doesn't exactly keep her on her toes either. So maybe it's more of a relationship of convenience, right?
Sure. Like, I guess I don't see what he sees in her. I don't necessarily see what she sees in him in that way.
He's Pike.
What does that mean, though?
Because we know Pike, though. Like, we know that he is like... But
what does she need from him? Like, what does she... Why... I don't know, like, why isn't she with Spock? I know Spock. Why isn't she with Spock? Like, so it's that aspect where I don't understand their relationship. Like to me, she gives off a lot of Hermione Granger energy. Like, like she's smart.
I can see that vibe, right?
She's smart, and and she's kind of a rule stickler, right? And so, but like and Hermione doesn't come into her own until much later. So, but to me, Are we going to have a fight, Clyde?
No. Nicole said something that I actually think is interesting. I can't bring it up because I'm not logged in, but she says someone like Lon, but older. And I read that and I was trying to turn that around in my head a little bit. See, Paul, you're thinking about it. You're trying to what does that look like? Right? But if you think about it, Lon is very confident, or at least comes across as very confident in who she is.
I mean,
right?
The other
Did
thing
you
is,
not see the last episode?
I think it's because we have gotten a full backstory on Lon. We see her strength. We've seen her go through things. We have this respect of her story. And I think we're just missing a respective story in that the character is just coming off as love interest rather than character I'm fully rooting for it. Obviously I'm rooting for her to not get fridged by the end of this two-parter because I don't need that. But
there was a discussion about that too. I like what you're saying, Myrriah, and I'll take it a step further. Not only have we not gotten her backstory, we haven't gotten their backstory. Right. And when we were introduced to her, it was basically after an amorous night. Star Trek has a habit of, I'm just going to say it, bringing in random love interests.
Yeah.
That you don't want to. It's like I'm not even getting attached to this person, and they kind of sort of introduced her to us in that manner. Have never given us a backstory, and we're just told that the relationship is serious. And I'm like, really? It's so serious? Because it seemed like he was about to break up with her before he broke out in song. So. You haven't given me anything to hold on to.
So the things that were interesting to me about her character in this episode, and I thought Pike was also playing along to this kind of plot buildup, is that perhaps there is a way to communicate with the Gorn, right? Although she is trying to do it in the self-sacrificing way, I think, and Pike is that eternal optimist for diplomacy, is what we're seeing there. But it is interesting. And this was a question I wanted to ask y'all, is last season, a lot of the writers, and specifically Henry Alonso Myers and Akiva Goldsman, talked about how the Gorn are a pure monster, which is something we don't get a lot of in Star Trek. And I feel like this episode is placating the idea that there's potential for diplomacy with the Gorn and finding different ways to communicate with them. Which we also get a bit more into their engineering and some of their intellectual prowess, right? When we are introduced to, and we'll have to, this will be a two-parter because we get Scotty in this episode. I feel like we've buried a big lead, right? But Scotty essentially is telling us a bunch of these engineering facts that he's figured out about the Gorn, which is telling us their intelligence level. So do you think giving the Gorn potential for morality makes them more interesting to you, or are you more interested in them as a pure monster character?
I was more interested in them as a pure monster character.
Interesting. Paul?
Mainly because we don't see that often.
I would say we have a monster, and that's the Borg. The Borg.
Also an intelligent species.
Oh, Paul, your microphone went mute.
Well, also, I think there's back. You're back.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah. But in TOS, the Gorn are actually very smart, and they, they're master strategists, and here you got one in a pretty dope,
that space suit.
It's hot, with the robotic tail, kind of and they're trying to break into the saucer section. I mean, I think that's pretty. What I fear is that there won't be a core philosophy that I'm going to appreciate for because going in, there's this tradition in sci-fi and fantasy where lizard people are completely you can't reason with them because
no intellectualizing, right?
The reptilian brain, right?
Exactly. Ultimately what they'd have, the reason why you can't rationalize with them is because they have no empathy. Empathy is a mammalian trait, and here are lizards without this trait, and eventually, so to that effect, like, I don't know how they're going to flesh that out and change them from monsters to villains, because I would rather them transition to villains in the same way that the Borg did.
Right, because there's more. It's like I love the horror aspect of like they are deadly creatures, and it gives that like Jaws scenario, right, where it's like something based solely on instinct, and you're having to just like fight the instinct of an animal, versus when you get something more like I think of in like Nope, when it's finally revealed that the spoiler alert for Nope if you haven't seen it, but the creature revealed at the end, right? Like it's also an intelligent creature. So you're fighting both an intellect as well as instinct. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. So as far as keeping the monsters, I just don't think it's sustainable. Like,
I think it's fun to have like the Godzilla, but it's like even in Godzilla eventually has like feelings that they kind of work with at the end, right?
Yeah. Well, and they talk about here, you've got this like solar flare type of thing that is triggering them to basically go hunt, right? To swarm. And so I think what we're getting at is you've got this intelligent species who also has some kind of innate biological drives. Right? Strong, overpowering biological drives that is giving us some sense of understanding of why they're doing what they're doing. But I also like the fact that those drives mean that they're going to be harder to rationalize, right? Because I think that Starfleet gets into this habit of going, hey, we're going to come in here and we're just going to reason with everyone. And to me, the idea like, hey, I'm going to come and it's going to be kumbaya, and I'm going to open my arms and say, hey, scary Godzilla, don't you want to be my friends? And then you get your head bitten off. Seems appropriate to me.
Yeah, I do. I wonder too, it's like kind of like the Baul, the species that used to eat, Saru's people, and how there's like eventually the way to like get past the innate animal, quote unquote, animalistic behaviors, right, of species that just didn't know any better, right, at the time. So I think, to Paul's point, it'll be interesting to see how they transition them more into that villain area.
I have one caveat where it's like, one of the things I do like about having a monster is that, much like The Walking Dead, not that I'm a big fan of Walking Dead, it's like having a monster changes or like stresses who you are civilization wise.
Right.
So how does Starfleet and the Federation deal with something that you can't reason with? That, like you're afraid of the Borg because they're better, smarter, and faster than you. But like here are the Gorn, who are basically like
dinosaurs.
Like wool animals in your mind. It's a different fear between being hunted by an animal and being hunted by like, robot demon.
Yeah. Although I do like, because we get so many like, quote unquote humanoid species in Star Trek, both for the sake of special effects and for the performers, I do like seeing a fully intelligent species that looks nothing like people.
Sure.
Yeah, agreed.
I find it really, really exciting. Speaking of zombies, I thought the like zombie movie reference little moment on the bridge was funny. And in my mind, I was like, I was like, oh, Spock's going to watch an episode of The Walking Dead and be like, man, that actress really looks like Michael.
That would have been hilarious.
But he'd probably watch something classier like Night of the Living Dead. But
which is what I was thought. Like if you're gonna do zombie, your first zombie movie has to be Night of the Living Dead. You got to start with classic.
That was my first, and then I think I eventually jumped to 28 Days Later, which is intense, but which you also can't find anywhere. Sorry, I was just trying to watch it the other day, and it's not available like on any streaming platform.
Intense.
You can't watch it on any streaming platform. I wanted to ask y'all, I was so excited that Ortegas was going on this away mission, and there were so many moments where I thought we're finally going to get some Ortegas backstory when she like saddles up to help Mbenga, but instead we're just talking about Chapel. So what were your thoughts about Ortegas in this episode? I mean, the flying scene was great and super fun, but again,
like for me, like I like Ortegas because she's snarky and she's fun and blah blah blah. I don't know if trying to force her backstory into like crevices is the way to get to know her. Like, you know, I think she'll need her real episode, and like and ultimately it'd probably be a war episode.
Yeah,
you know, because like that's how she's defined by like, oh, I'm a great pilot, I was in the war. You know, like just a side note, as they're power diving, you know,
as P.W. Gregory says, you were born to fly. We know, Pike. Every week we know.
That's right. Love it. Yeah. Like, you know, and there she is smiling and you know, and like Pike and Sam and Benga are like, you know, they're just hating it. B goes, yeah, like this is harder for men because their genitalia is on the outside.
So this is why more women should be test pilots. Is what you're saying.
You know, I was watching and I was like, wow, that's really cool. Of course, you know, it's a ship flying scene, so I was really into it. But there were a couple of things that kind of stood out to me. It's like, one, you know, here we are again, where Ortegas serves as the pilot. This is what we know about her. And I was just thinking, you know, if you think about other Star Trek series where you had a really killer pilot, right? For what we know, Tom Paris is one of the best pilots in all of Starfleet. But you know what we didn't hear every single week was that Tom Paris was the best pilot in all of Starfleet. Like when it came up in the story, it'd be like, oh yeah, Tom, and Tom would be like, hey, I got this. Like I should fly because, you know,
sure.
I'm a pilot. It does feel like that she's getting really boxed in. And this is where I'm screaming, like, I feel like we really need 16 episodes a season so that we can really flesh this out. And I hear you, Paul. When we get it, it's probably going to be a war episode. I wish it wasn't. Like, I really wish it was something completely different. Like, tell us about before the war. What's her real background story? How did she grow up? Like, I love what led me to Starfleet episodes. I love those, like that backstory.
I wish, because her character is like kind of like a fun, snarky character, like has some good like laugh, like consistently has like great laugh lines in the script. I almost wish there were those moments that were like Annie from Schitt's Creek, where it's like just those like weird,
like
little like, oh yeah, I know how to do this because of X, Y, and Z, and it's like these little like 1 second quips that make you go, what is going on with that person? You know, like
no, absolutely. I think that work out great. I think, or a family episode where like her mom comes on the ship for some reason, and then you discover something. I like those episodes, like, you know.
Oh, the Loxana Troy episodes. Where you're like, oh my goodness. I mean, who doesn't love a parent showing up and telling like embarrassing childhood stories? Like that's always fun.
Yeah. So what was I gonna say? Like, although to be fair, like, you know, she's getting more like justice than Sulu did.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to like, you know, fully compare to episodes that far back in the past, right? For what our tastes are of television.
Oh, sure. But like
Sulu had a sword, man.
Eventually, by
abs.
Eventually, yeah. No, I would also say that
the like, Naked Now, wasn't that that's like the first season where, you know, we see a shirtless Sulu, right? Wasn't he?
But is that character development or just
abs?
Just abs.
Just abs.
But like, who's the best pilot in TNG? Like, no one cares about the pilot in TNG. Yeah. So
that's a great question.
I know the answer. The answer is Riker, and I know that because of Jericho.
Right, you're right. The answer is Riker.
I wanted to move into Spock having to have his save the day moment in which we actually don't get any reasoning for why he's the only one who's able to do this.
It was hilarious. Like V and I were watching, and she was like, "What's happening? Did I fall asleep? Did I miss something?"
I rewound it and rewatched it because I was like, I had to have missed. Like he's like, only I can compute this fast, or like my body will hold up against the gravity better because I'm.
Or maybe it's too far, and we have to use. There's not enough air in the suit, so like I have to go like you go half oxygen, and because I'm Vulcan, like I'm used to the thin air, something like that.
Something. I was like, I wonder if there was a line and it just got cut or something, but it was something I definitely missed that I was like, or you could just say, I need to do this, like for your own personal thing. I think they also would have accepted that.
Yeah, it was just really weird. Like it was specifically anti-human. No human can do this. I'm like, okay, calm down there.
It was, I think my spouse said this was not a logical choice, but it was an emotional choice.
Mm-hmm.
But
I have to do this.
Here's the other thing about the saucer section plan. Like, they all go, oh, there might be some survivors in the saucer section.
This is my biggest nitpick of the whole episode.
I'm with you. I think we're all on the same page here.
I just needed Chapel to go up to one screen and say, search for life.
Yeah.
One. And that's all I needed.
Listen, I didn't even need that. Walk over to one of the bodies next to you and poke it. Like, just check for you are a nurse. Check for some vitals. Something like right here, right.
Any signs of life. I needed just like one throwaway line because the whole time I'm listening to this plan, I was like, you're not going to check. You're not going to have Spock go over and do a quick computer check before placing these rockets to hurl this thing through space. What if there's one other person who's then just watching themselves get hurled into the atmosphere?
So you're telling it. Here's where it fell down for me a little bit. Like, here's my nit, right? And I was struggling. I wanted to get past this, but I was struggling with this. Even if she doesn't check, you are telling me that the only person who survived that thing is Chapel. The only person. That's the one person who survived.
Yeah.
That's
and
it?
I saw some folks online talking about maybe it was because she beamed onto the ship after the attack had already started. And so it just like wherever she beamed in. But it's like, well, no, because she would have had to have beamed into the
transporter
room. So it's like, shouldn't have at least maybe one other person in the transporter room survived? I don't know.
Like the person who transported her in.
And people are saying sensors didn't work. Sensors didn't work to read other things, but sensors still worked internally on the ship.
Or even have her try.
Just try, yeah.
But here's the thing. I'm okay with like them going like, okay, whoever survived in the saucer section, they're not going to make it. We're gonna use this. We're gonna because like we're gonna have to save hundreds of like colonists potentially, right? I'm okay with that. But the non-discussion of it, no one mentioning it, seems really reckless. It seems like like, oh, maybe you're not the best number one. I don't know. It just seems anti-Federation.
Yeah, or have like Chapel running around in the spaceship for a little while looking for survivors. I don't know. I needed some sign of we cared about the other people on this ship.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Go ahead, Paul.
If we go back to the another thing, if we go back to the surface, they go, why is Scotty creating a trap for Gorn? It seems like he's literally what's he doing? Why is he doing it?
I think he's trying to create a distraction in there as a trap so that they don't find the colonists in the diner. It's a decoy.
Like a decoy by having like sounds and drawing people to this. Like it'd be one thing if the decoy was across town, but if it's like walking distance.
I mean, we never really saw how far apart those were, so I'll give that. But I did want to talk. What did y'all think of? So the actor's name is Martin Quinn. He's a Scottish actor. What did you think of Martin Quinn as our Scotty?
I think he's great. I think he's a little short. I think Scotty's taller, right? That's my only thing. I was like, oh, he's really short, but like maybe I don't know.
Montgomery Scott is I'm an ex-engineer, so Montgomery Scott is one of my favorite characters in probably all of space opera sci-fi, right? To me, he's the original archetype of the ship's engineer. Like that's the hallmark. And so I always worry if you're going to introduce a remake of that. But I thought so far they continue to do a pretty good job. And this is no different. I liked him.
Mm.
I think that the tension is, as much as I like this character, we just were talking about how much we like Palia. I'm hoping that this isn't a replacement for her, but
I don't
again,
think
we
we're
talked
at that
about
place in the plot line yet, but it would be fun to see him as like under her for a little while.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
Like
yeah,
mentorship,
he is
mentorship.
he is lieutenant junior grade.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
But also, we're starting to get a trend here where we replace the engineer every single season on these Star Trek shows. So,
Well, so far we have not replaced anyone. As far as the engineer for this season. This season.
We have, yes, this season. You're right. We haven't.
To be continued. Dun, dun,
To
dun.
be continued. But I feel like if you are gonna have now I'm blanking on the actress's name.
Carol
Hell yeah.
Kane.
If you're gonna have Carol Kane, like you're signing her for multiple seasons. You know what I mean? Like I think unless schedules don't work out after this strike, we're gonna have her around for a minute.
Well, I thought that too, but I also thought it's Carol Kane. She kind of can do whatever the hell she wants to do. She doesn't like, she could be like, yeah, I'll sign on for 10. But what if she's like, now I want to do something else? Like
I mean, maybe she will, but I think she seems to be having a good time and it's a pretty fun character.
I love her.
I was interested in, I liked seeing Sam Kirk kind of taking a moment here to kind of reframe from just cranky brother and being someone who wants to like go and study. And it would be cool to see the Sam Kirk of it all figure out a way for us to communicate with the Gorn in some way. I'm not sure if that's something that's historically accurate, but it could be interesting. I also wonder if this will eventually, because he has now been beamed onto a Gorn ship, if this will prove to be the straw that breaks the camel's back that sends Sam Kirk away from working in Starfleet.
Yeah, I hope not, because like like he's a. I was talking to an editor friend of mine, and I go like, oh, like whenever he's on screen, I go like, he's pretty compelling. He's not even doing anything, and he's pretty compelling.
Yeah, so. He's also, I will say, I think he's the cuter Kirk in this series personally, but that's just my taste.
Listen, okay. I have nothing to comment on that.
Wait.
All right.
I'll go as far. Yeah, I think aesthetically he's probably more conventional.
I
not conventional to the taste of me. That's all I'm saying.
I'm saying he's conventional. Like,
Okay.
I mean, if we're for it, okay, so two of you've made a comment. I guess I can jump in and say his features seem symmetrical.
That's not okay. Not okay. That's not okay.
I got no clue. What I can say is, and I don't know if it's just because of the character, right? And again, this idea of Jim Kirk, he's still not my Kirk, but Sam Kirk is a character who I'm like, when he's on screen, I'm not bothered at all. Like I'm literally like, okay, he is a part of this cast. I'm probably more interested in him being seamlessly a part of the story, whereas Jim Kirk it feels a little bit like I'm looking for traits of TOS. I'm trying to figure out in every scene how you relate to the Kirk I know, right? Like, how do you become that Kirk? And it's slightly distracting, whereas Sam is just part of the plot. It's part of the story to me.
Right. You have no expectations of this character.
No, he's new to me, and I'm learning him.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. I thought the Batel v. Gorn little face-off was a fun little homage to Alien. That was a nice visual moment. I also thought it was interesting that essentially if they already know you've been implanted with eggs, they're kind of like, oh, we won't kill this one. Because I'd have to go back because I wonder if does it need, I guess it needs to be an alive body for the eggs to incubate.
Yeah, my understanding is that the host is killed when it hatches.
Right.
Like in a very alien-esque manner.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about probably the most expensive point of this episode, which is the zero gravity space battle between Spock, Chapel, and that Gorn in that suit, which was both so slow but so exciting, because I was like, this must have been a really interesting scene to figure out the pacing for, because you are having to work within the parameters of zero gravity, right? But you want to build tension and action and have some sequences. So I thought it was really interesting to me. Also, so the actor who's in the Gorn suit is 6'7".
Sure.
And the suit weighs 100 pounds. So I was like, that's very impressive. And then having to do wire work on top of that. I was very impressed with the whole sequence.
No, I thought it was very good. I thought it was very fun. You know, it might have been a little dark for me. Like I would like, but maybe that was, you need that to keep the horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was really like the little moment that it felt like the raptor scene in Jurassic Park when you see the reflection, you know.
Sure, yeah.
I thought that was fun and smart.
I think so. One, I love the scene. You referenced the raptor scene. Here's the thing about that raptor scene.
Clever girl.
The raptor scene became iconic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
we're talking about the kitchen runaround, right?
Yes,
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
like that just became an iconic idea, right? It's almost like we'd never seen anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say that this is like iconic, but it did evoke some of like that throwback to that, and it was just done really well. Like the idea to me, I don't know that I necessarily saw it coming before it happened or right before it happened, in that Chapel shows up and is like, hey, Spock, and realizes, oh my goodness, I am not alone, and that's a problem.
Yeah, the Gorn reveal of it trying to break into the computer that Chapel first sees, and then we get the addition. I thought it was interesting they did kind of the tail thing twice, right?
Sure.
As sort of like, you know, that felt like when again in Jurassic Park, when you would feel like the shimmers of the water moving and the ripples, you know, you get these like little signs of the bad guy is near, right? But I thought they did a good job. Also, the VFX, like once they kind of fly out of the top of the saucer and you start to watch it go down, I thought it just looked really amazing. And I'm just like very thankful for the VFX teams that do such an incredible job on this show.
You know, it's so funny how many saucers hit planets. Like you'd really think that at some point Starfleet would be like, hey, maybe we should redesign these things, because the saucer piece, it inadvertently lands on a lot of planets, like, you know, edge first in a way that we didn't intend.
I don't know. I think that might be a feature, not a bug.
Feature, not a bug.
I wanted to ask, so one of the other kind of really iconic cliffhanger two-parters, right, is Best of Both Worlds, where we have Riker trying to make the decision of whether or not he's going to shoot on Borgified Picard. And now we have Pike having to make the decision if he is going to follow Admiral April's orders and leave behind kind of a 50-50 mix of cast here of whether or not we know their fates or not, right? Like, we don't know what happens to Lon. We do know what happens to Mbenga. We do know what happens to Sam Kirk, but we don't know what happens to Ortegas. And we have all of the colonists, which will inevitably be our red shirts of the situation. What do y'all think of the stakes here for Pike versus the stakes that were set up for Riker? And when did y'all watch Best of Both Worlds as it was airing? So did you also have the giant gap? Yeah, because that's like, you know, someone who's only ever watched it in rerun, you know, like I inevitably know the fate of the characters before I watched it. So I didn't have the same sort of tension. So what do y'all think of the comparison here?
Yeah, I mean, I vividly remember, like, what the hell is gonna happen? Like, where is this going? And this was a time for me where I wasn't as a sophisticated TV watcher as I am now. Which, you know, is probably not saying very much, but at the time, like, the idea of like
At least someone said it, Clyde. At least someone said it.
I have to say, the idea of being able to think about like, oh, well, will they really get rid of this actor? What are the other dynamics that are going involved? Like, what would this mean to the story? Like, I wasn't thinking about that. All I thought of like, what is he gonna do? And I don't know. That being said, now I'm looking at this and going, that was when I had a little bit of TOS and TNG was my whole world. Now I feel like I've got 10 other Star Trek series to go on. He's not going to abandon them. Even if he has to take a break and regroup, he's a Star Trek captain, so ultimately he's going to save him.
Like, I hope like when we come back in 2025, it goes 5 years later.
Ooh. No.
Pike's at the bar. He's drinking. He's going like, "Oh man, I should have stayed and fight." Like and blah blah. I don't know. I thought about it and I go like, for best of both worlds, like even though like you didn't know what was going to happen, it was still a fairly blue sky show where everyone's going to be okay. So like you knew that was going to be fine. With this show, like I feel that for all of it, like the tastes are not as blue sky, so people can die. But you have also the advantage of like some people are going to never die or not die on the series. So for me, I was going like, what would I do in Pike's shoes? And like the answer is, I'd probably run away. Not because I don't see a solution where like
what you have and your capabilities are not going to be able to get you where you need to go.
Exactly. The only thing that would make me like second that is like Pike go like, well, I'm unkillable right now. So let's just go for it. Let's see what happens.
Well, it would be interesting if he's like, I'm taking a shuttle, everybody else go.
Yeah, like I'm totally unkillable. Like I know where I'm in 10 years, like, and so that would be interesting. But like I don't think they do that. So that's not a card that we play a lot where Pike knows he's a super undeadable. But it's interesting.
Do you think Batel is going to survive the Gorn hatchling?
Like,
no.
I mean, I think it would be an interesting development and a feather in Chapel's cap if she can figure out a way to deliver the Gorn baby without killing Batel. Also, because I think as a gore horror fan, I would like to see what happens there.
Alien baby.
You want to see that arm just be severed when the John Hurt moment comes out. That's
but it's like, like in surgery and it's like, but they, it doesn't kill her,
Like for me, I don't think she can die.
Why?
Because like from a narrative,
too predictable.
From a narrative standpoint, if she was going to die, she needed to die, on the surface. But now the scene that you would have is like she's just there and like, okay, I'm going to die, and we're not particularly connected to her, and so then it's kind of like
doing the side of the hospital bed goodbye doesn't feel as emotionally fulfilling
because we don't love her the same way we love like even Hemmer, like so like there's no moment to be had by killing her, like I think if they were going to do it, they would have done it in this episode. My hot take, I could be wrong, like but like it just seems like anticlimactic for that, especially if she's the love interest. The only way they would do it is like she dies and it makes Pike do something that he wouldn't have done before, which is unlikely. I think that route's a little.
What I don't want. So there's been a lot of talk today about kind of fridging characters, and got into a conversation early, and I was like, I don't think that they would do that, because really what we're talking about when we talk about fridging is a situation where the love interest dies, and then that forces this, this overprotective, Gorn rampage. I don't necessarily like. I would hate that, like absolutely hate that. But I don't know. I feel like we've been going on this journey where I've been expecting her to die at any minute. Like just
For sure.
And so the question is, well, what do you gain if that happens?
Yeah. No.
Right. And the only thing that I wonder is not so much this violent rampage, but Pike is still talking about, well, maybe we can negotiate. Maybe there's a diplomatic approach, and maybe her death puts him in a place where he's like, just no. I think their biology, their culture, like if you think about it, how they reproduce is a violent attack against another species.
What I mean is that perhaps Chapel figures out a way to where their babies can be incubated without the need for this particular violent way of the eggs being spawned.
Yeah, maybe like well, once again, we go to the lizard folk trope, where like if you lean into those monsters, like there's no if I told you, hey, like what we could do now is just have babies without putting them in women, and we can just like find it's safer and people won't get hurt or die, blah blah blah. I think there'll be a lot of resistance towards that. And in the same way, like, I don't think even if Chapel were to find a way to do it, which she may, like, I don't think it changes anything. Because I think the Gorn, like, for all of it, they're a predator species. Like,
right. And it might not change anything right off the bat, but it would be an interesting diplomacy tool since they've already sort of started threading that needle.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, I mean.
So, yeah, you go, Myrriah.
Oh, I was like, that was kind of it I had for my notes. I mean, this episode was very like action packed, things moving forward. I thought Rebecca Romaine's like moments with Spock about like, I would never tell you to give up hope was really sweet. I thought there was lots of great little interactions between Pelia and Uhura. I love the don't sugarcoat. I love crazy ideas.
Sure. Yeah.
I thought that was great.
I would like to discuss what we think will happen next in storylines in the future cast a little bit, because we're at the end of this season.
We are indeed. Yeah. And I think, maybe not next week, but the week after, I'd love to do a full season 2 sort of rehash and rediscuss and talk about some of the arches. But as far as featuring, I mean, I'm assuming the first episode of the next season will be the continuation of this, and we're going to jump back into the Gorn, or it will be something wildly different, and they'll make us wait an additional episode before we find out what happens in this one.
There'll be another law episode.
Yeah, who knows? It could be like a weird side quest, like someone gets hit in the head and we see like a full like a Q shows up, who knows? What do I think is going to happen next season? I mean, I'm hoping we get Chapel outside of a relationship in storyline. I'm hoping we get Mbenga some joy. I would love to have a full Ortegas episode. And I think I want a little bit more Pike development outside of his knowledge of his
future.
His fate. Yeah. Those are all things I'm interested in. I'd also love to get to know Una more, because that's another character that we had in TOS, but we don't know a lot about. So,
like for me, like there's this point where in TOS, she has a fiance, and so like I assume that she's going to meet him on that internship and this.
Yeah, the fellowship is run by the gentleman who will eventually become her fiance.
So I'm really interested to see how that affects the Spock relationship.
Yeah, I also want some justice for T'Pring.
I will say, like, I was talking to a friend who has not watched TOS or anything, and I go like, just so you know, T'Pring is going to have Kirk and Spock fight to the death. So, like, she's going to be okay. Yes. But what was really interesting is like I would want, for some reason, I want like another Portal episode where like, I don't know if you go back to Lower Decks, but if a Lower Deck character were to come back and they would have like a relationship with Spock, maybe Tendi or peanut hamper?
Mm,
There you go. You got it in.
I got it just under the wire.
just under the wire. 55 minutes in. Probably our latest peanut hamper acknowledgement.
But yeah, but like like I'm curious because I imagine like the what you call it, the Chapel and her to be fiance will have a very interesting reaction, interesting dynamic with Spock and her.
I would say for me, I'm ready for us to get to my Spock, right? I'm kind of ready for Ethan Peck to be a little bit more Leonard Nimoy.
Fair.
That's I'm kind of seeing the arc. Like I thought we were going to get there a little sooner than we're still. He's still pretty emotional.
He just started flirting with Kirk. We still got a long ways to go.
Yeah. So I'm kind of interested in that. I definitely will agree. I'm dying for more backstory on Ortegas.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of want a little bit more. I want more Uhura and more number one.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a courtroom.
There's been a lot of Uhura, this season.
This season had quite a bit of Uhura, but yeah.
That's not me bitching. That's just me making a statement.
Yeah, but I think I kind of want to see something a little bit more dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Less the tragedy backstory.
Yeah, like just I don't know. Like I'm still trying to figure it out, but there's some things there I want to see. Yeah, there's just, and I kind of want to. I am interested in Chapel and how Chapel evolves outside of this whole kind of Spock issue, or not issue, but this relationship. Like I want to see more Chapel on her own. What I don't want to see is Chapel. Like we see a lot of Chapel with Spock, and now we see a lot of Chapel with this other dude. Like I want to see Chapel on her own, being a complete badass. I think that's.
I'll settle for her being healthy.
Yeah,
sure.
I'd also love to get to know Lieutenant Mitchell, who's on the bridge all the time. It'd be fun to see some more of her.
I was gonna say something, but I can't remember her name, so I was like, I'm not like this is gonna be like the third episode in a row that I gotta ask Myrriah, what's the person who sits next to Ortegas? And I was like, I'm not doing that. So thank you. The other thing is I'm waiting for my mirror episode. Like I want to.
Oh yeah.
A mirror episode.
I think eventually Una's gonna leave and Kirk's gonna be number one.
That will eventually happen. So I don't need that this next episode. I was going to say, or this next season quite yet. I do love the episodes that are things like Elysian Kingdom, like the things that are those holodeck sort of, episodes. I know they don't have a holodeck yet, but yes, those like holodecky episodes. I think those are really fun and remind me of the things that I enjoyed about the original series.
Sure.
I wanted to ask y'all, what other TOS era characters are you ready to be? So we get, Scotty this episode. Who do you think will come next season?
I mean, Sulu is the next person, right? But then that's in direct competition with Ortegas.
I know. That's why I'm nervous for Ortegas.
And like Chekhov doesn't come till in TOS.
Correct.
And so I guess Dr. McCoy would be the only person in the main cast.
I think I'm good actually. I don't know that I need anybody else. And to be honest with you, I'm gonna, here's my hot Frey. I'd be good if we got Clyde. A little. Yeah, here's my hot Clyde. I'd be okay if we got a little less Jim Kirk. To be honest with you.
No,
and that's not about a Kirk issue. It's that every time Kirk shows up, I feel like you're stealing screen time and character development from somebody I actually want to know about.
That's a fair statement. Fair
yeah.
statement.
I mean, do you think they're eventually, we've talked about this before, but after this season, do you think they are working their way to a full eventual, I don't want to say rebooting, but like a rejourneying of our original series characters?
I've been thinking about that a lot. and I keep going back and forth. I haven't actually come up with an opinion. Do I think they'll do it? Sure, why not?
I hope not.
I don't know that I need it.
Yeah, I mean,
because Paul, to your point earlier, if you do it, what do you do, right?
Okay. What do you do?
Do you set it up as this is the prequel to,
or do you just do journeys that are different episodes, essentially?
Sure.
I mean, you could do that, or do you go ahead a few years? Like, I mean, it gets a little murky, and the question is, what's the payoff? Like, I'm excited. I was excited about the idea of a Section 31 show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about an Academy show. I am disappointed that you're canceling Discovery. To me, there are a lot of stories that you still can tell. I don't know that we have to retell TOS. I don't know what we gain by that.
P.W. Gregory makes an interesting point. If TOS had actually expanded on its characters, Strange New Worlds wouldn't have had to pick up the slack.
Whoa. That is a hot Gregory.
That is a hot Gregory.
That's a hot Gregory.
But it's kind of, I think it is that in the same way that, like, have y'all ever gone back to watch like the original Battlestar Galactica series?
Sure.
I have tried. I did not make it very far.
Exactly. And I think that's what these like newer updates can do with some of these properties, is say like, oh, what is the, I don't like using the term better, but what is like the modern storytelling interpretation of these characters and these ideals, right? Mostly you're communicating the ideals and the metaphors of these sci-fi stories.
Yeah, no, the contemporary interpretation of the ideals.
Right, because I don't think there's a lot of people who, I think it's a harder sell to get people to go all the way back to the original series to tell them this is how to learn the most about these original characters.
And also the thing about the original, maybe there is a benefit here, right? Because every time I go back and try and watch TOS, there's a rub against my 2023 sensibilities, right? Like, I've talked about this before. We're recommending episodes, and I'm thinking I want to, especially because of Lon.
Mm-hmm.
I started this journey where I was like, I want to know more about Khan. I want to go back and watch the Khan-centric episodes. I want to watch the Wrath of Khan. Like, I want to know more about Lon's backstory. And I watched the original Khan episode, and I was just kind of horrified. And so if you're talking about going, hey, we're gonna take out a lot of this, sexist, patronizing, racist kind of elements of a 1960s show, which at the time was revolutionary, right? And progressive, but we're going to really do it, then maybe that might be interesting, but also dangerous. So I'm still on the fence.
Like for me, like, I know I'm going to step outside our franchise, but like when I watch Star Wars things, that's it's another franchise. It's more of a.
I think I've heard of it. Yeah.
Like laser swords.
Less pew pew, more zap zap.
Thank you. Like what I find is that I'm more drawn to shows that explore the universe that Star Wars created,
right? Versus,
I don't care, I don't care about more Jedi stuff unless it's something new. Like, I like one of my favorite movies is like, Rogue One.
Agreed.
And like Andor, like, here are these things that like fit within the universe and even the storytelling construct that you've created, but it's a completely different story. I don't need to see, and like I don't need to follow the prime characters that like it's like you're what you call it. You go to a mall. A mall is a place where people used to buy things. You had to go to physically.
Yes,
it's like Amazon, but like
only real, like brick and mortar Amazon.
Teenagers would roam, old people would mall walk. It was a time.
But like the way you made a mall was you made an anchor. You made several anchor stores, right? And then an ecology grew from that,
right?
And like I think we're in the ecology phase of Star Trek now, where like we have the anchor stores, And like, I don't need you to go and like redo Bloomingdale's or Macy's or whatever. I want to see what other you populate with the world.
Well, I mean, I think you're spot on, Paul, because that's what I won't say that that's what I love about Discovery, right? This and Strange New
I think
World.
especially once we jumped into the future and we were truly like outside of having to deal with the canon of it all, right?
Yeah, no,
it's also what's appealing about Lower Decks, right? Is that you're like, hey, this happens in between some things. It's completely different. We're getting this story about not the main bridge cast, but some, some fun characters in the Lower Decks. It's interesting and expands the universe for us.
Yeah. So that's about that. I truly hope they do not make contemporary TOS.
Yeah. I think I agree. I wouldn't mind a movie or two with this cast. I think they're pretty fun.
Sure. A Strange New World movie. I take it.
Miss Powell family says Una as captain in a follow-up show on a new ship. I'd be for that.
Sure.
Right? Or
especially if it continues the conversation about her being genetically altered, right? And maybe we get more of that conversation.
I would like to see a little more of her Wolverine ability. I mean, she's basically.
I know. I'd like to see her someone said it, go toe to toe with one of those Gorns in the big suits.
Yeah, and then she gets hit and then she heals. She like light heals or whatever she does.
But I think overall this was for me a pretty exciting season finale. I think it didn't do too much in the way of wrapping up any major plot lines, but has instead definitely set up the expectations, I think, going into the third season, which we'll probably get in like 2025.
It wrapped nothing.
Yeah, wrapped up nothing. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Well, I'll say this. This is the interesting thing for me is when was the last time we had a true like to be continued cliffhanger as a season finale?
Probably on Disco, right? I think season 1 to 2.
But was it like a?
No, they didn't see the one. Did they solve it?
Was it a true?
Usually solve the puzzle box by the end.
And the story may not be finished, right? But like this is we're gonna cut you off right in the middle of the story. Like the only thing we got was that half the people got off the planet.
Was there? I remember Voyager with Scorpion 1, 2. I don't know if there was an Enterprise one. Clyde, you're the expert on Enterprise. Do you know?
No, I do not.
I definitely don't think there was a Discovery one. I think Discovery is.
It does. So it wasn't a two-parter, but it does end on a cliffhanger. As Discovery warps to Vulcan to pick up its new captain, the crew receives a distress call from Captain Pike on the USS Enterprise.
But that doesn't end the storyline. But the storyline's done, right? It's just like that's just the next.
Yeah, it does wrap up the storyline.
And no Lower Decks, no Picard, like everything because things are serialized now, I guess.
Yeah, it's very serialized, and also they never know when they're going to get canceled. So I feel
that's what terrifies me about this.
Well, it was already renewed. They're definitely going to film the next half of this season. So
you trust the studios way more than I do.
For now.
For now. I just.
I saw something, I need to read the full article, but it was about like the future of Paramount and how there's like it's not looking good for stuff.
Yeah, I'm a worrywart, so that's just me. But like, I'm just, to your point. Well, the other thing that's always scary about this stuff is like when we've had this before is what happens between now and the next 18 months or so, right? Like it's gonna lose momentum. Like right now, I'm like, oh, what happens? By the time this comes back, the whole world and how we look at TV might change.
We'll see.
like my response is like, it might be time to change your paradigm.
We're going to get booted for copyright infringement, Paul. Yes. Your voice is so close to that of Christina's.
It is like, it's fortunate that I cannot sing because like there's obviously it automatically falls into parody.
They're like, oh, we don't have to worry about this copyright.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was all I wanted to say. Was there anything else, y'all?
I think we're good. I think we're running a little long, so we'll let people off.
We'll let people go. But we're going to take next week off. But we will be back to discuss, I think, the full season. And then we will be picking a couple of episodes to prep us for Lower Decks. If there's any in particular you think we should watch. I think we had talked about maybe returning to some of the Con episodes. Maybe The Search. Or maybe The Wrath of Khan. Perhaps we could do a movie review. We haven't done one of those in a long time. So we will check that out. But thank you all so much for joining us. We will be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. As always, you can subscribe, rate, and review on Apple and other anywhere you get your podcast. Visit StarTrekPod.co, as well as a link to our Patreon is there. Clyde, where can people find us on social media?
You can find us at Star Trek Pod on social media. So come check us out. Drop us a note. Say hi.
Please do. Thank you, Karen, for helping us with the Twitter. We appreciate you. We will see you all next time. Live long and prosper. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.